Massachusetts is known as the cradle of the American Revolution, Red Sox baseball, Boston, and Cape Cod. But the Bay State is also home to deep forests, wild rivers, natural wonders, and forgotten histories. Despite this, the central interior and the western mountains are drive-through country for many. My name is Bob Tremblay, and I grew up in the highlands of central Massachusetts. I've spent my life exploring the back roads and remote trails of the state. I work as a professional outdoor educator and wilderness guide, and have led thousands of people on outdoor adventures throughout New England. Join us as we head off the beaten path and visit the wild landscapes, remote places, hidden gems, and high summits of the wilds of Massachusetts. This is Bay State Backcountry. One of my favorite ways to explore the wilderness is by canoe. Today I'm going to bring my canoe and I'm going to go on the Millers River. This is the Millers River right behind me. I'm in Winchendon, Massachusetts. We are in the Lake Denison recreation area. I'm going to follow this section of river down through the Birch Hill Wildlife Management Area. This is a really nice section of river to explore because it has a gentle current, but you can paddle down and come back to your same spot. One of the things that a lot of people find challenging about traveling on a river with a canoe is the logistics of going from point A to point B. So this particular section of the river right here is really nice because it lends itself very well to kind of starting at one point, exploring, and then kind of coming back. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate for you today, is how to paddle by yourself, explore a beautiful section of river, and all kind of the logistics of how to get the boat in the water and take the boat out and everything. And we've got a beautiful summer day here. I'm really looking forward to this, and you know, I'm hoping maybe even see some wildlife. So I'm going to get my boat and get ready to paddle. There we go, I've got my boat in the water. One of the more challenging things for a lot of people when you're canoeing by yourself, I know, is handling the boat. A kayak can be a little bit easier to kind of carry by yourself, but a canoe, if you get some practice on portaging it and getting that yoke thwart over your shoulders, it's not that bad. But anyway, now it's in the water, now the boat can carry me. So I'm going to get my paddles and get ready to go. Alright, so I've got some of my equipment in my canoe. I have my favorite canoe paddle. I also brought a kayak paddle that I'll be using later on. I've got my PFD, my life jacket, and I have some drinking water and keys to my car. Just about ready to go. So one thing that's a little different when you're canoeing by yourself is this two seats in the canoe are situated in different places, and so when you're canoeing by yourself, you want to turn your canoe backwards and you want to sit in what's normally the front or the bow seat. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Is here's the bow of my canoe. This is typically the front seat. I'm going to use it for the back, and the reason for that is that this more properly balances the canoe when you're by yourself. I have a very light load and I'm off. So, heading down the Millers River and on through the Birch Hill Wildlife Management Area. Alright, so even though I'm going with a current, I'm getting into a little bit of a headwind, so I'm going to want to get a little bit more power. So rather than using my canoe paddle, what I like to do is when I really need to move, is I like to use a kayak paddle, even though I'm by myself in a canoe. So my kayak paddle comes apart. I'll put it together, and when I put it together, I'm left-handed, so I set it up for a left-hand dominance, which is the way I have it set. And what's really nice with the kayak paddle is it's sort of like being in four-wheel drive. Now every stroke I take is positive, and so I can really make a lot more headway against a headwind. This is what I'll use when I go back to the car. I'll be going against the current of the river then. I'll use my kayak paddle for that. If you're using a kayak paddle in a canoe, which I really advise, it works very, very well, is you do need to get a slightly longer kayak paddle, because in a kayak, you're sitting down flat on the water. In a canoe, you're up a little bit, so you need a longer paddle to kind of clear the gunnels and reach the water. And this is a kayak paddle I have used a lot. I actually used this paddle when I canoed the Northern Forest Canoe Trail for 740 miles across New York and New England and into Quebec. This was the paddle that I used when I did that trip. So I really like pulling it out. It's like being in four-wheel drive. I love exploring rivers because they're, unlike a trail, a river is natural and a river is moving. It's alive. You know, it's flowing. And that's part of what makes it interesting, but also kind of part of what makes it challenging is that things are always changing. The river is cutting its banks. The river is nourishing the forest. It's undercutting trees. And that's what we have right up here. So right up here I can see is we're coming up to some blowdowns. And blowdowns are trees that the river has cut underneath the roots, and between the roots being undercut and the wind blowing, the trees have fallen over. So these trees are blocking my way. And so what I'm going to do right now, there's a lot of different ways to get around the trees. It looks like here I'm going to be able to just do a little bit of a dragon slide. So we have a little bit of kind of like some tall marshy grass here. I'm going to pull the boat up, and I'm just going to pull it up out of the water and slide it past these trees. Of course, I can really raise my bow up. All right. Now to get out of the canoe, this is when they're most tippy, is they're designed to be in the water or to be on land. When they're half and half is when they're most tippy. So to get out, especially when you're alone, you've got to be very careful. What I like to do is I take my paddle, I'll put it right across the gunnels, I lean forward, I'm going to walk right in the center of the canoe, putting my weight down on my paddle, over the thwart, and coming up. I'm drifting away a little bit. And before too long, I'm safely out of my canoe. And now this is pretty easy, is all I really have to do is drag and slide. So, in fact, without a whole lot of effort, I'm just about ready to continue on. Back in. And there. Probably took me 2 minutes to get past that obstacle. This is the kind of thing that I like about rivers, is that red maple that was an obstacle for me right now that I had to slide my canoe around. Now I can kind of see how that tree falling down fits into the greater plan. And as you can see here is the beavers are taking advantage of this tree, and they're getting an easy snack. The beavers eat the inner bark of the smaller branches of the tree. And we can see right here, that's just what the beavers are doing. They're able to just swim up and get an easy meal. So this is a freebie for them. The tree fell down, they didn't have to do the hard work of cutting it down. So they get a free meal. Coming out here, it's like just having snack food right in the water. I'm sure the beavers just think this is the greatest thing. And so this helps to break the tree down so that it eventually will be recycled to become part of the riverbank and nourish the future generation of trees. So that blowdown that was an impediment, so to speak, to me as I'm canoeing, is actually doing its role in the greater ecosystem. So that's the kind of thing I love to see as I paddle along. So I'll continue on, see what the river brings next. Well, I'm really happy to see those black ducks that we just saw. So when I say black ducks, I don't mean that they're black. That's the species name, they're black ducks. The more common duck that we see around here are mallards. And what's happening to the black duck numbers is they're going down, and the reason they're going down is because the male mallards are much more aggressive than the male black ducks. And so because of that, the mallards have been crossing with the black ducks. And so what's happening now is that to find a purebred strain of black duck is becoming increasingly rare. A lot of them now are hybridized, where they're part black duck and part mallard. But that's what we just saw right there, was 3 black ducks. So that's a really nice thing to see. The other bird we've been seeing, he's been kind of running down ahead of me here, is a great blue heron. And the great blue heron is a wading bird, really long legs. He walks by the shore of the water here. He's scanning for fish and frogs. He has this long bill that he uses almost as a spear. And as he's wading, he captures fish and frogs for his diet. And they're a spectacular bird, very big, very gangly, very skinny. And their numbers were severely reduced in the 1950s and 60s, largely because of DDT. And DDT was a pesticide that was sprayed pretty liberally everywhere to control mosquitoes. And the trouble with the DDT is that it worked really well on the mosquitoes, but it went down the food chain. And so fish that ate the mosquitoes got higher and higher concentrations of DDT in them. And then birds such as eagles and blue herons that ate the fish also got high concentrations of DDT. And while the DDT didn't harm the birds themselves, what it did is when the females laid their eggs, the eggshells were really thin. And so when the female eagles or blue herons would sit to incubate their eggs, they would actually break them. And so the numbers of eagles and blue herons and a number of other birds, fish-eating birds, osprey, were going down because of DDT. And since DDT has been banned in the late 1960s, we have seen these birds come back. And so where blue herons once were rare, they're now very common. And bald eagles, which once were on the endangered species list, are now plentiful throughout the nation. So really glad that that toxic chemical is out of our ecosystem now. So, let's see what else we see as we paddle down the river. So here we are coming up to a really neat landmark. This is known as King Phillips Rock. And what it is it's an enormous boulder that was deposited here during the Ice Age. And so when the glacier was moving, it carried this rock from points north, who knows how far away. Then as the ice melted and retreated, it left this big boulder here for us to admire and enjoy. It's called King Phillips Rock after King Philip, who was a Native American chief. His real name was Metacomet, and his anglicized name was King Philip. So whether he was ever actually here or not, who knows, but it's named kind of in honor of him. So we're going to go check this out. This is really impressive. Pretty easy landing. I like this. So here it is, King Phillips Rock. You really can't appreciate the size of it until you actually stand right up next to it. This thing weighs, I don't know, many tons. And to me, it's just so impressive to imagine the ice that carried it here. So one time during the last ice age, the ice where I'm standing right here, the glacier was about 1 mile to 1.5 miles thick. Very similar to what we have in Antarctica right now. And so imagine that all that ice kind of plowing this down, and it left this rock behind. And today, many years afterwards, you can actually measure the earth is still rebounding back from relief of the weight of that ice being gone. And this is just sort of like a mute reminder of the last great ice age, King Phillips Rock. Alright, I can see my next obstacle up ahead is actually a very small, in-the-works beaver dam. So what I'm looking at is I can see the beavers have been attempting to block this part of the river. They've been cutting fresh greens and kind of spreading them across, and that's what I see here. Is I can see there's still fresh leaves on this. So the beavers are probably working on this past few nights, trying to block it up. Fortunately, there's a low part in the dam, and I can see where the current is flowing over it. It's making a little bit of a V-tongue as it kind of goes over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get a good running start and get some momentum going. And I'm going to create a little surge wave, and it's going to wash me right over that little drop on the dam. Can't fight the river, but you can harness it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Here we come. Little riffles. I can see the little V current going right over here, and we're going to slide easily over that. Fun stuff. All right, go with the flow. All right, well, here's our turnaround spot, Birch Hill Dam on the Millers River. So I can see the river that I came down right behind me over my shoulder. And this is Birch Hill Dam, and you look at it and you say, well, why is this dam built? You can see all the abutment here and the rocks. And this dam was built by the Army Corps of Engineers to control floodwaters from the Connecticut River. So in the event that we ever had torrential downpours or a hurricane or a big tropical storm and the Millers River were to rise, this dam would actually control that water, and theoretically it could actually flood this whole field back behind me and a lot of the forest that we just came through, the wildlife area, and it would hold these waters back to prevent all the other feeder streams that would flood the Connecticut River and all the farms downstream through Massachusetts and through Connecticut. So for now, normally this is just a big open field, but it's here as an emergency to control floods, and it provides great wildlife habitat. So, and a beautiful place to paddle. This is our turnaround spot. I'm going to be paddling back up to where we started from, kind of retracing our path. But it's been a beautiful paddle. We've seen some wildlife. I found some goose feathers, and I'm looking forward to the paddle back as much as I was looking forward to the paddle down.